Hello everyone, my name is Tyler and you are watching The Fourth. Today we will be looking at something that is both very exciting and a little bit scary for the future in this tech age. And that something I'm looking at is this 2Africa project, which was announced May 14th, 2020, right in the midst of COVID. And for that reason, I feel like it did not get a lot of news or attention, so you may not have heard of it. So what is it? This is a project that's been funded by a group of large corporations. I will list off in just a moment, but let's first talk about what the benefits are to this idea. 2Africa will be the world's largest subsea cable project, and it will interconnect Europe, Middle East, and 16 countries within Africa. It is set to go live in 2023-2024, and it will deliver more than the current combined capacity of subsea cables serving to Africa today, as well as further growth of 4G, broadband access, and preparing the future for 5G. This subsea internet cable will be surrounding the entire continent of Africa, with a distance of 37,000 kilometers long. And just for reference, this is 3,000 kilometers short of the circumference of the entire Earth. So why is this cable different from all these other cables? It will work like a parallel circuit in that if the cable becomes damaged at any point, the internet access will still work, pulling from the other direction. Currently, there are other cables that are only long enough to reach a point-to-point destination. This means if there are any disturbances, the effects may directly affect the users and take a long time to repair. This cable will also have 16 fiber pairs instead of the traditional 8 fiber pairs that many older technologies have. And this will lead to a greater and more cost-effective capacity, assist with flexible management of bandwidth. The depth of this cable will also be increased by 50% to avoid interruptions and disturbances that many other African subsea cables encounter. But what about satellites? Because satellites are the norm, right? Well, actually 99% of intercontinental communications traffic is done through subsea cables, and this can include phone calls, data transfers, email, text, and mobile calls. And satellites are actually slower than subsea cables. Satellites have a broadband speed of 100 megabits per second, whereas fiber optic cables have a speed of 10,000 megabits per second. So what are the benefits of this? The reason that this is important in the first place is the fact that Africa's population amounts to just over 17% of the world. Out of the 1.34 million people living here, only 42.2% of people have access to the internet. In comparison, North America leads with 90% and closely followed Europe at 87%. This represents a huge opportunity for the service and tech industries to develop and integrate their services for all these people. This is not just a benefit for corporations and investors, but rather all the people of these 16 countries. Furthering the internet integration means greater access to essential services such as e-agricultural services, banking systems, improved education, healthcare, access to trade with foreign markets, general internet access benefits, and many others. Let's first talk about the e-agricultural services. This means the exchanging of information, ideas, and resources used to strengthen sustainable agricultural and rural development. A basic example of this that I can think of is the implications of mass farming crops. Although it does have its drawbacks here in America, such as pesticides and crowded farms, having a more stable and cheaper option will greatly benefit those in the industry. 60% of sub-Saharan Africans work as small operating farmers, and this could provide great opportunities for them to expand their businesses. Unlike here in the US, this expansion does not mean that smaller farmers will be put out of work. Reasons for this is because there are roughly 226.7 million people starving in Africa today. The demand for food is apparent and not going away anytime soon. Let's next talk about banking system. Providing further options for those who wish to save, invest, or take out loans to build their businesses, essentially the backbone of creating a successful market. Back in the 1980s, Africa moved away from the state-controlled banking systems and provided reforms towards restructuring and privatization. However, after the implementation of private banking firms, there were many barriers to the demand and supply market. The financial penetration as of 2015 remained extremely low relative to global statistics. Less than a quarter of sub-Saharan Africa's population had access to a bank account. One of the main reasons for this cumbersome process was the requirements for opening a bank account. Many require a valid ID, proof of address, 2 passport pictures. Although these do not seem difficult to us, the population in low-income areas and countries may not meet more than one of these. With technology overflowing into other regions, Africa began to move away from manual banking from the 80s and 90s and began digital services in the mid-2000s. This allowed banks to reach a higher number of clients and provide more options for those wanting to save and invest. This created an easier process for opening bank accounts where the user no longer had to use an address, but they could rather use a phone number, ID, and a place of employment. This subsea cable will bring forth much more reliable and faster internet. This will create the prices of current technology to decrease, allowing those who could not open banks before to move forward with mobile commerce. Next, I'll be talking about how education can be improved from this internet cable. If you are a student right now, how are you learning from most of your classes? And I bet I can answer that for you, and it's going to be online. Even before COVID put us all in our houses to learn, the internet provided the majority of class content, at least for me. Just imagine the change in literacy rate alone for sub-Saharan African students and adults, which currently sits at 65%. Education is also not just limited to schooling systems, but rather having internet access to learn about topics that one would not have otherwise learned. For example, I did not know a year ago I would be researching this topic, but because of the fast internet and understanding, I'm able to learn about these things that are completely outside the realm of my own physical neighborhood. Next is basic healthcare, and this kind of goes hand in hand with improving the education because having immediate access to treat a simple issue early on could prevent further complications down the road. This can be such as basic human nutrition and dieting, proper filtering of water, and many other health-related questions will be at the fingertips of more users and with less interferences and drops. And lastly, the access to trade with foreign markets is also going to give those further ability to purchase items from foreign businesses and the general internet access benefits that we all enjoy here, but we don't really think about daily. And those include HD TV, internet services such as e-commerce, advanced multimedia, mobile applications, and video conferencing. So now that there's a general idea of what the good that this project is going to bring to the continent of Africa, let's now go over who is in partnership with this plan. The first one that drew my attention was Facebook. And if you don't know already, Facebook is an online social network company. Secondly, China Mobile International, which is a telecommunications service provider in China. MTN Global Connect in Africa, and it's a leading provider of telecommunication services, offering cellular network access and business solutions. Orange, which is based in France, and it's a multi-service operator that covers cybersecurity, digital transformation of businesses, mobile financial services, operative services, connectivity of consumers and businesses, and content. STC, which is Saudi Arabia based, and it's a telecom company. It's the largest company in the Middle East and North Africa based on market cap. Telecom Egypt, which is based in Egypt, and it has experience with subsea internet cables being one of few in the market. Vodafone from the UK, which is another telecommunication company. And lastly, WIOCC, which stands for West Indian Ocean Cable Company. And it's Africa's leading supplier of resilient end-to-end managed wholesale connectivity. So remember at the beginning when I said that this might be a little bit scary? Well, here I'm going to talk about why I'm a little bit skeptical about all this great news that I've already told you. First, I'm going to start talking about the contributors and why it's scary, and it's going to lead with Facebook. And as we all know, hopefully, Facebook has had a host of issues in the past regarding security breaches, accusations of swaying public opinion around elections, and censorship, and many others. And one of those main issues that I've came across was free basics. And free basics, if you don't know, is Facebook's free internet that is provided for users that do not have the same access like those in other countries. So one of the issues that the free internet of free basics offers for people is that Facebook is pre-downloaded onto people's phones and their profiles for Facebook are set up. And the application of Facebook is the only application that is free with the internet provided. So this creates a lot of people to only use Facebook as their main source of online interaction. A good example of where this has shown to not go as smoothly as Facebook has hoped is in Myanmar. And in 2016, Facebook partnered with local telecommunication companies, reaching nearly 100 million users. However, the project became an accelerant of violence and ethnic cleansing related hate speech, resulting in the death of tens of thousands of individuals. And these individuals consisted mostly of Rohingya Muslims. Facebook was also used by the military and anti-Rohingya activists promoting executions, false news, propaganda, and hate towards these groups. And the reason that this is important within Africa is because free basics may be implemented within this project as well. However, due to the nature of the partnerships, there may be more options and assistance for the users and Facebook to assist in monitoring in the amount of hostile content released on this project. And of course, with any business, the goal is to have an annual increase of growth, and with Facebook, this is no different. As the user count of Facebook reaches 2.7 billion monthly active users, Africa is looking very promising for Facebook for keeping up with that growth. So another skepticism I have of this is that China Mobile International is included in this partnership. The reason that's kind of scary is because China Mobile is a wholly owned subsidiary of China Mobile. China Mobile, however, is owned by the China Mobile Communications Corporation. And China Mobile Communication Corporation is a state-owned enterprise directly controlled by the government of the People's Republic of China. Basically, this can lead to a lot of ethical issues later down the road, such as corruption and data infringement. Another issue with China involved in this is that China is somewhat creating a debt trap for Africa as well, which is an enormous issue alone separate from this cable. Although China has been somewhat forgiving and publicly announced for certain loans by providing zero interest, this only makes up a small portion of the debt Africa owes to China. Between 2000 and 2017, Africa received roughly $142 billion in loans from China, and out of that large amount, only 9% has been partnered with the zero or low interest. These African countries will continuously have difficulties in competing with others if they have this debt hanging over their heads. This can eventually lead to slower development processes for infrastructure and building industries due to the payments due to China. If it becomes bad enough, these countries may default on their loans and need to request assistance from the International Monetary Fund, and this could lead to further requirements that trap them into a state of stunted growth. One main issue with the technologies being produced lately is that there is a massive amount of biased censorship that occurs. For instance, what are the chances that a handful of the 2,000 languages currently in Africa are going to be accounted for? And if so, to what degree are they accurate enough to provide communication for millions? Not to single out Facebook because they are currently the leader of the most amount of languages supported, but it will become extremely difficult for legitimate translations with so many variable tongues. There are also many pitfalls that go past the level of basic vocab for languages, and one of which includes the censorship or lack of censorship that occur where these algorithms and programmers are unable to detect, and therefore leads to discrimination and violence towards groups. With Facebook as a contributor providing $1 billion and a goal to connect the world, there are concerns for whether regulations will be put in place to protect the end users in Africa. With these users having some of the least amount of experience with the internet, it is important that they are protected from the start. Overall, I see this as a positive project going into place that will significantly change the continent of Africa. Creating opportunities, education, improving health securities, and overall connectivity to the rest of the world, I can see greatly improving the well-being of those in these countries. I hope to see more trade and successful partnerships within and outside the continent in the future. However, it is important to take close notice and actively monitor those involved in this project. Checks and balances need to be made to reduce the likelihood of tech companies and foreign governments exploiting their newly found users. Not only that, but making sure that online interactions do not lead to an offline issue such as